The Great Black Cat of the Witching Hour by Ben Wheeler. Some of the best Halloween stories ever written have the devil in them, such as this one, a true story told to me by a fifth cousin I met by chance in a London pub by the name of The Pillars of Hercules, some years back. He said that this happened to a third cousin of his on his mother's sisters-in-law's side, some years ago, so you know the source can be trusted. It begins like this. When Corey McGraw took the pretty Margaret Mag Henderson out to the Bannockburn Halloween Festival, he had planned on an all-night event. Mag was a great girl, tall, pretty, and with a great figure. He could not think of dating any other. He'd take her off to the festival and dinner, maybe take her to the pumpkin patch, and definitely to the cemetery, where he'd scare her a bit to get her to hang on his arm. Then maybe sunrise over the moors. But then her grandfather caught her, with a face of displeasure that stretched his thin skin across his skull, more frightful than any disguised ghoul. "You're a comin' home, granddaughter. There's a foul witch wind, and a lot not the stars. Devilry tonight for sure." Corey thought him a crazy old man, but Mag adored him. He offered to escort the both of them home. Mag held onto his arm, which felt just right, but the old man kept staring at him and discomforting him. "Supposing you want to stay at the house, then? We'll have to tide the couch, then. Keep the fox from the hen house." Mag looked away, blushing, and let go of Corey's arm. Corey hated the old man. "No, I'll be away to my own house, across the moors and through the woods." Corey felt certain the old man would do something to him while he slept, and then complained that Corey had discomforted Mag by his presence in the same house. The parson had been extra fiery against lust and superstition the last few sermons, and Mag listened carefully to him. She always bugged Corey if he skipped a service, which was often. Many times he got the entire sermon from her, even as she talked his ear off. "I didn't take you for a fool. Stay the night." A hint of horror crossed the old man's eyes. "I didn't joke about the stars or the winds. These things move about openly, now that Christ is less worshipped. Stay, and risk not the perils of Halloween, when dread stars are high. I heard the rumour of a great black cat running about. Assuredly on the devil's mischief." Corey waved him off, ignoring his chuntering and pleading. "I'll be fine. I know the moors and the forest like the back of my hand." He grabbed Mag and gave her a kiss, mussing her red-gold hair. "You're too bonny and fine for me to be taken by some ugly old broom-riding witch." She giggled and kissed him back. "Och, me brave manny. But you mind my grandpa, and hide and pray if you see something witchy or smelling the sulphur." Corey clicked his tongue and gave his assurances. Soon he left her and her grandfather, one sullenly staring and the other waving. He swaggered off, leaving the light of their home for the darkness of the foggy moors between him and his house. The jaunt would take him the better part of 2 hours, but he figured that the time was well spent. "Exercise and cardio. I'm fit as a fiddle traipsing about to see my girl. Pshaw to the parson. Nuts to Mag's grandpa. I'll not see a single devil or witch this night." He declared both to himself and to the moors, as he crested the first of the low hills, separating his house from the house of his beloved. The moon had filled in nicely, and was nearly bright as day, despite the fog, with no light polluting the natural shine this far into the bogs. He could see his shadow as he jogged and power-walked up and down the moors. He danced a jig on the crest of one, in case Mag was watching him through her telescope, and worried after him. Clouds and wisps of mist crossed the sky and his path alike, and he took enjoyment from boldly running through the banks of fog, slipping through the night, making shapes in the corner of his eyes, yet slipping away when he turned to look. The chill made him feel alive, and he jumped a creek with a running leap. "Oh, but I'm as brave and bonny as any son of Scotland, fit as a fiddle and twice the fighter of any Sassenach." And so, as Corey McGraw danced up and down the moors, he bragged and boasted, louder and louder, until he nearly shouted over and over again how brave and bold he lived. Then he was struck by the silence. The shadows of cold and night had crept on him while he walked, and so his own disappeared. No amount of the moonlight seemed to better it and free his shadow from their grip. His heart fluttered a bare second, and he turned. The house Mag kept with her family could no longer be seen. No light crested the dark hills. He could, just barely, glimpsed the glint of the church steeple, with its shiny gold cross at the top. Corey almost wished he was listening to the parson give his dry sermons. "Bah! The old man got to me!" And so he went on, whistling. Corey looked around him. He first whistled tunelessly, before launching into some pop song he'd heard on the radio, then an old hymn. Yet it could not drown out the wind, nor did it fill the silence with anything like comfort. The echoes slid under his music, bringing it lower in tone, and creating an almost menacing air to the sound. He stopped whistling, and began to jog through the moors. As he neared the forest, he heard a large beast slobber and lick its lips in the dark. Something heavy, like an animal as big as a car, wheezed in and out in his direction. Corey turned. Cresting the moor, and looking down on him with eyes of pale blue fire, an immense black dog. It had no depth or form beyond the silhouette. Only the eyes could be seen in the dog's head, at first. The next second, the mouth opened and flame shot from it in a gout. The bark turned into a howl like a volcano erupting. Worst of all, the inferno illuminated nothing, yet the heat scorched Corey's face. He ran for the forest with all the speed he could muster. The black dog bayed with the sound of a geyser, and galloped after him at a speed no mortal hound could match. Corey dodged quickly, though, and even as the flames melted the heels of his boots, he jumped into the forest. He tripped on a root, falling forward onto his face. He covered his head with his hands. However, he did not feel the flames, nor the hellish bite of some dog from the nightmares of his ancestors. He cast about him, and saw the black hound sniff at the edge of the forest before running away. Corey cursed. "Will I prefer that monster to eat me by the end?" He stood and shook off the leaves on his jacket. "I should have stayed and let Mag's crazy old grandpa tie me up and draw on me." He saw the black dog stand on top of one of the hills and look back. The eyes pierced him from nearly a mile distant. His heart thumped in his chest, and despite a chill breeze, he sweated in every pore, from his palms to his scalp. "Ach!" he exclaimed. Corey walked deeper into the woods, back towards his home. He had not been knocked off course, but the stories his grandmother had told him came to his mind. Stories of 100-year sleeps, cursed castles, dragons, ogres, and 1,000 other misfortunes danced in his head. Curse me for a fool! And again he wished he'd been tied up by Mag's grandfather. He'd take the cackling and the "You're not good enough for my granddaughter" all night long over this. He continued on in this way, treading carefully, from tree to tree. He looked out for fairies, goblins, and 1,000 other monsters and threats. He avoided a fairy ring with utmost care. Sometimes he heard music in the far distance, and fled the opposite way, for fear of coming across some perilous fairy feast. The moon rose, nearly to its zenith, when he heard a rustling to his right. With the speed of desperation, Corey climbed a great oak tree, quick as a wink, and hid in the branches. He peeked out from the leaves, to see what nature of danger he had stumbled on, or if they knew not of his presence. A moment later, he saw that which gave him such a start. A parade of cats, of many colours and breeds, moved by, marching in a rough order, and headed by a great black tabby of such size and mass that Corey wondered if it were merely a small puma. He thought that it might just be some cat wandering on cat business, and he might leave. But then he remembered Mag's grandfather's warning, and stayed above, in the trees. The variety of cats astounded him. Slick Siamese followed bulky Maine Coons, which followed dignified Persians, which passed waddling Munchkins, which overtook a slow-moving Scottish fold, who bullied some Himalayan cats, who in turn picked on the Somali cats, who had to give way before the Selkirk Rexes, and so on, until Corey wondered at there being so many breeds of cat. Finally, 12 cats, each a different breed representing the whole, wearing princely crowns and circlets of gem-studded gold and silver, one with a tall bishop's mitre, joined the horde of cats below. They pushed themselves to the front, not without violence, and sat before the great black cat, which seemed asleep, chest rising and falling, eyes closed. The yowling raised to a fever pitch. Each feline screamed and hissed as loudly as it could. The whole forest shook with their cries. The only one not making a sound were the 12 cats with crowns and the great black cat. The great black cat seemed to wake up, then magnificently raised a paw. His voice rang deep, deeper than the roar of the black dog of the moors, and he said, "O my subjects, I have, as promised, given you the run of the earth, and interfered not with your deeds. In exchange, I requested that you come and tell me your evil works every 7 years at this date and time, that I may be satisfied you are using my gifts properly." And so the cats began to cry out the things they had done. It was terrible to hear them call so, in human voices. Not a single one of them proclaimed a good deed. The 12 crowned cats were silent in all this. "I pushed no less than 50 cups, mugs, and antique glass sundries from the shelves and tables. I slaughtered nearly 10,000 good holy church mice. I kept my human slave from meeting a man who would make her happy. She is set to die alone, and I will eat her corpse." "That's nothing. I caused an infection in a child that will lead to mental illness all his life. I vomited and pooped and peed on every single piece of furniture and every inch of carpet. I killed a hobo and ate him clear to the bone over many days. I caused a scientist who was close to curing cancer to lose his work by jumping on his keyboard." And so on for so long that Corey worried that the whole night would be him in the tree, listening to such horrid deeds. Yet the shadows did not seem to move an inch during the long hours of listening to all the evil cats could do. And then, with eyes of gleaming yellow, like polished jasper, the great black cat turned to the 12 crowned cats and asked them what evils they had done to satisfy him. These villainous deeds were greater than the sum of all evils before, and their actions, whether by inspiring witches as their familiars, or causing trouble for world leaders through their cat-like behavior, outclassed the villainy and misery of all the rank amateurs before them. Corey started to shudder and shake involuntarily. So many calamities over the last 7 years were from these 12 arch-fiends that he could not bear to look any more. When the last one finished, the great black cat sighed. "I am satisfied. These evil works are such that I could not dream their equal." And all the cats, even the hatted ones, preened and prided themselves. "Well, I'll dismiss you for 7 years' time again. Perhaps the 12 here will be unseated next time. Aim high, my servants. I'll send the word through my cat's paws, where we will meet again." The joke was met by hissing and meows like laughter. "What of the son of Adam in the tree there? Should we fetch him down and eat him, flesh, blood, bone, and soul?" The great black cat stuck out his red tongue, winking one of his baleful eyes. "I thought to keep him as a snack for later, and to share him among you as a reward." The cats without crowns meowed and hissed in displeasure at being left out. Corey looked to see if there was some opportunity to jump down and run for it, but the cats surrounded the tree on all sides. He could hear scratching at the trunks. Some called to dig the tree up, others to cut it down by clawing out the wood. Corey shivered and clutched his branch tighter as the cats went on and on about how best to serve him up. Some called for carving knives, others for a great stew pot and spices, and yet others cried out over and over again, "Eat him raw, lap his blood, lick his organs, gnaw his bones." And so on, until Corey nearly fainted from panic. Desperately searching for any way to get out, he remembered something he read in a book once, and shouted, "Oh, that you, the greatest cat I've ever seen, and I've seen cats, are in my presence. Honour me by looking upon me. Oh, it's too much. You have given me so much to live for. I have to tell everyone of your magnificence. I have to sing about your lustrous coat. I will dream of you until my dying day. Your court is beyond the courts of King Arthur and Charlemagne and Isabel and Ferdinand combined. He flattered the great black cat without ceasing, even as he felt the tree being shaken from its roots, and cats climbed the branches. Claws started to pick at his boots. The great black cat licked himself for a while, then cast jaundiced eyes upward, thoughtfully. Corey did not like that look on him. The great black cat looked intrigued and spat out a furball in a commanding way, as a man would spit.
Now, hold up, my lovelies. This is a man to listen to. He has good taste in cats indeed. Sing, you said. Why don't you give me a tune? The best songs ever written have me in them.
The yellow eyes blinked and examined him closely. Corey panicked, but breathed out. He had first met Mag in choir practice, after all. To be sure, your outstanding awesomeness, sir. Let's see. And he thought for another second. And then, in the cleanest, clearest, and most excellent tone he could, he sang out to the tune of Tell Me the Old, Old Story. Tell me about the great black cat, the unseen king of cats. Oh, the great black cat and his glory. The great black cat shifted uncomfortably.
Enough. Maybe don't sing about how amazing I am.
The great black cat shifted and scratched his chin with his claw.
I suppose you could be useful.
The cat grinned at him.
All right. I won't eat you tonight. Flattery does get you everywhere with me.
The cat yowled and yowled that Corey should be eaten, bones cracked, and marrow slapped up. The great black cat jumped up suddenly and howled, Quiet! All the hair on his back stood up, and the claws and teeth extended. In the night, his form seemed more like a saber-toothed tiger than a large cat.
People have forgotten about me for years. Now only some dumb old folks tell my stories. Ho, what a shock they'll have when he tells everyone about meeting old Scratch, the Emperor of Cats, eh?
The cat stopped complaining.
Now, head on out, all of you, except my 12 princes of cats. You shall attend me personally on great mischief tonight.
The crowned cat nodded and stayed, while the rest slipped away, some slowly at first, then faster and faster, until Corey blinked, and there were only the 12 princes of cats left, and the great black cat himself, all Scratch.
I've got a sweet date with some hot witches in a little while. So how about this? I'll let you live for tonight. There will be 3 wonders before midnight. If you hide in the tree and don't make a sound after the 3rd one, you'll be free to go home. For the witching hour will end then, but not before. Remember, 3 things. Now away. I must not be late for the Black Mass.
With a yowl that sounded like 10,000 metal nails on a chalkboard, the great black cat leaped into the shadows. Without missing a beat, the 12 princes of cats jumped after him, leaving the barest set of paw prints in the dirt, the only sign they had been there. Corey thought to get down, not trusting in anything, cat, human, or otherwise, that called itself All Scratch, and attended black masses. But, as he reached out to steady himself against the trunk, he heard a laughter in the breeze, and cast himself into the shadows of the branches. Not a second too soon, for on winds that smelled of blood, sulphur, and concoctions and perfumes so strange, Corey had no name for them. Witches flew in from all corners, silhouetted against the moonlight. They rode on brooms, vacuums, motorcycles, scooters, cars, planes, which they rode on the outside, feet dangling about the pilot's cabin windows. A train carried some 30 witches in a comfortable and luxurious passenger cabin, complete with tea kettles, and yet more rode things so diverse and numerous that Corey could not stare at them any longer. Then there was a cry of delight, and with a whoosh and a sparkle, 3 red flowing dress-clad witches descended to his hiding spot. Their hair flowed behind them, black, white, and blonde, in a shimmering tricolour wave. Peaked hats with wide brims, each at a different jaunty angle, blocked out the stars behind them. The first one cackled merrily, riding a broom side saddle. The second cooed comfortingly. The last moaned and gasped, casting herself about.
"Oh, sisters, what a catch! Let's take him for a gift to the master. What favour before him we will have,"
the first declared, grinning with a smile that extended her cheeks a foot to either side. Corey saw the 3 women were fair, but each had a deformity that made her hideous, like a painting, but with tears in the canvas, marring it. The second batted eyelashes that tickled him from 3 yards away, where she hovered in the night air on her mop, bucket floating a foot or 2 behind her, and full of dirty water, or blood. Her nails ran longer than the branches he tried to hide on.
No, I can smell that he has a beloved. Let's ensorcel him so that he enters a pact with us, so we can get his firstborn child and his 7th son. What power among our sisters we shall have!"
The third's breasts were so exaggerated that they flapped in the wind. Her hips were so thick they easily wrapped around the shop vac she rode, which she directed by turning the nozzle this way and that, as she desired. Her lips outmasked Corey's thumbs.
No, dearest sisters, let us fold him like a napkin and keep him in our purse until after the ceremonies. Oh, what fun we will have!"
They laughed and giggled, before agreeing with the third sister. The first said,
"Come, boy, we are blessed to know all art's forbidden to mortal women."
The second said,
"Come, boy, there are things we 3 can do that will open your mind to things only known by the highest Brahmins of the decadent Hindus."
The third said,
"Come, boy, such pleasures await you as dim the holy lights of cursed heaven."
And on they went. Corey tried to keep silent, but he could take no more, and shouted, "Get away from me, you witches! I'd sooner marry my girl Mag's grandfather than touch any of you. Mag's more beautiful, more virtuous, and more feminine than any of you 3. Striking upon a sudden inspiration, Corey cried out, "Lord, preserve me and my love from these terrible witches!" The first one laughed mockingly. The second one sighed, as if disappointed with a child. The third pouted, her lips grotesquely exaggerated.
"Well, that takes the fun out of it. Let's go, he can't be reasoned with." "Guys like you make terrible lovers. Terrible. You're terrible."
And they flew away, last in line in their dark purpose. Corey sighed, and when he thought the coast was clear, he looked for a way down. Just as he found a likely branch, he heard a sound, like the tinkling of a bell, and the silver notes of a flute. He hid again, fearing some new terror. There passed under him a procession of 7 riders on horseback. Each one bore an instrument, flag, or strange object. Corey wondered if he could bear knowing what they were for. They were the most magnificently dressed people he had ever seen. They were adorned with gold, silver, and platinum jewelry. Gems of highest quality studied every metal surface. Gold thread decorated their robes with scenes of hunts, and kings, and stranger things like giants, dragons, and chimerae. Their horses were fine steeds, and armoured with barding covered with beaten and moulded gold. These beasts required no leading, and the reins of finest black leather remained slack in the hands of the riders. Each piece of their apparel and bodies shimmered in the moonlight. Their faces were more fair than anything Corey had seen before. Mag, perfectly done up in their clothes, jewelry, and makeup, would seem like an ugly dog compared to these riders. Now he could hear them talk, and speak, and laugh like the sound of bells. It was so lovely to hear them speak that he would pay money to hear them talk about the weather. Their motions were so graceful that he felt like his motions for pulling Mag close for a kiss were more like the motions of an ogre, pressing horrid lips to his hideous ogre wife. His heart slowed, and began to beat in time with their tune. He felt that he could cast off his clothes and dance for them, but that it would be so ugly to their eyes, they'd shame him, and he could not take that at all. He tried to turn his face away, so he would not look at them. Their music entwined his mind, but, before the final note of the spell, he was shocked out of their hypnotism. Whenever he looked through the corner of his eye, the faces, so fair before, changed to an ugly, pock-marked and sin-filled face, so twisted by evil that it made the witches from before seem to him like supermodels on the cover of a fashion magazine. Their faces were cruel, and did not match the laughter and joy of their words and phrases. No matter what was said, their lips barely moved, and Corey wondered if they spoke at all, for now he looked on them with horror. The lead rider, who wore as a crown a wreath of holly, antlers, thorns, and frost-covered vines woven together, said to the rest, "Dearest companions, I feel as though we are being watched. Puck, do search for him and point him out for us." One who had a cap like Perseus and a pair of winged sandals unique to him, said with a laugh, "Ho, ho! With pleasure. See, my lord, there he is, on the branch shivering, as if a lumberjack had it in his sights." All turned towards Corey, who tried to make himself very small against the trunk. A woman with a green wood spear and a clear dark green orb with a golden statue of a newborn fawn at the core, said, "My goodness, what a lucky man to see us so arrayed. He is blessed among men already to see my beauty. But can we do more for him, my lovely cousins?" Another woman, who alone covered her face with a mask of silver and a white metal that shone with its own light, clapped her hands. "Oh, can we give him the head of a donkey, like in the play?" She had been ringing bells in time with the hoofbeats, to make the gold-shod steps yet more pleasing. The man beside her, who had a beard, and was the one who played the flute, sighed. 500 years, and it's still all Shakespeare with you, Lady Mab. Let's just enchant him and send him to sleep. Mortals are all about the infinite heavens above us, so I'm told. While he sleeps, let us secret him away to some far-flung world, 1,000 years hence." A figure of a man, who tapped on a drum of ivory and the skins of extinct beasts, said, No, too complicated. We'd lose him in the asteroid belt, or down a black hole, or something, and the trick will be ruined. Let's just turn him inside out, or have him lose his memories." Several of the ladies complained at the thought of blood being sprayed everywhere by turning him inside out, and the men cried, "Boring, boring! You must do better!" And so they went about debating the merits of the donkey head against making him unable to taste cheese, or switching his left and right hand. The one called Puck declared, "Switching body parts is so last century. Surgeons can switch them back these days. Let's make him fall in love with a sow." At this, Corey stiffened and said, "Mag." It was barely a whisper, but it was clear all the elf lords and ladies, for that's what they were, had heard him. They smiled and laughed, and the sound rang cruel beyond reason. The ideas came fast and thick, and smote Corey on the brow with their sadism. Let's have them switch bodies. Ho-ho! How about curdling her breast milk? I don't think we've turned a maiden's hair seaweed green in years. Remember the girl with the ducks? I think we can do better, but with geese this time. Corey could take it no more. Again, inspiration from the sermons of the parson and words of Mag came flooding into his mind. God, Lord Jesus, please have mercy on me, a sinner, and protect Mag against evil. Keep us against those who would harm us. The elf lords and ladies, without a sound, not even their former music, turned away, and their horses disappeared into the mist that rose up from the roots of the trees. It was like they had never stopped their procession. Saying a prayer of thanksgiving, Corey returned to the busyness of finding his way down, when he heard a slight rustle in the bushes. For a fourth time, he hid himself among the branches. The great black cat sauntered in, swaggering and happy beyond what Corey thought reasonable.
"You still here, you tasty silver-tongued flatterer?"
The cat meowed, and the 12 evil princes of cats leaped out of the bushes in every which way.
"Ho, ho! I did not think my plan would work so well, or that I would be so fortunate that wonders would actually pass you by, and keep you in your hiding spot. Say, the witching hour is nearly over, and I'm hungry for a snack. How about you, my friends?"
The 12 cats meowed in agreement.
"What? You said you wouldn't eat me!"
Corey could not believe his ears, and he was having trouble enough with his eyes already. He expected something, but not for the great black cat to treat his hiding spot as some sort of larder. The cat's eyes cast themselves aside, as if he could not believe Corey's outbursts.
"I wouldn't be much of a prince of lies if I didn't lie, now would I?"
The great black cat laughed, and taking a running start, leaped up, opening his maw so wide it could have eaten the tree in a single bite. Corey screamed and shouted. He threw up his hands before his face and cried, "God, Jesus Christ, Holy Ghost, protect me against the violence and evils of the devil!" The great black cat laughed again, but when he bit Corey, who continued praying even as the fangs touched him, his teeth could not find purchase. His mouth began to smoke and steam, and the great black cat leaped back, yowling in pain.
"Bishop Whiskers, Duke Southpaw, get him! We need to stop him praying. I cannot touch him if he's in prayer."
Yet Corey focused all his might in praying for God's protection. The 2 cats tackled Corey, but they leaped back, screaming and burning, their fur smoldering when they touched him. Every one of the cats tried several times and several ways of distracting him, yet they all failed. The great black cat spat and hissed, cuffing his 12 followers. He called them every evil name, and promised great tortures in hell for their failure, and great presents or favors if they should succeed. Yet not a single one could touch Corey while he prayed. Finally, the great black cat looked above. The moon had begun to move again in the sky.
"Gah! Fools, half-wits. The witching hour is over, and I must away. You were lucky that he protected you here. I have eaten men who thought themselves holier than you many times. In the Colosseum, in the form of many wild animals, I lapped Christian blood that flowed like rivers, until I purposely burst the stomach of the animal I resided in, and jumped to the next. I won't forget this, and if the guard over you is ever dropped, I will do you a great evil."
And the great black cat screamed and charged into the forest, and the 12 evil-crowned cats with him. Corey leaped down from the tree and ran to his house as the moon set, where he called Mag and told her all the wondrous and terrible things that happened to him. She wept and praised God that he had been preserved, having prayed all night for him. From then on, Corey respected what her old grandfather said, and the grandfather came to love Corey as a member of the family, and supported his marriage to Mag the next year. In all that time, until the day he died, Corey never missed a Sunday service, morning and evening, nor a Wednesday prayer meeting. He said, "For fear of the devil and his evil work," and people thought he spoke of the temptation to sin.
But we know the real story, don't we?